Joining us now, the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt. Jonathan, it's good to have you on this morning. The march was important yesterday, but will it send a message to different pockets of even this country where the hatred seems to be just cropping up worse than we could have ever imagined?
Well, Mika, I think it's a good question, and I'm glad we're talking about the march that took place yesterday. But the one thing I would say is it wasn't tens of thousands, Mika. It was hundreds of thousands of people on the mall. I heard upwards of 300,000. And we should note, these were Jews and non-Jews. These were Republicans and Democrats. I saw people with MAGA hats and people with pride flags. I mean, where else in America today could you see something like that? And by the way, you saw Israeli flags and American flags. They sang the national anthem and the Hatikvah. I mean, again, it was not just pro-Israel, it was pro-America. And I just contrast this with the images I've seen, the video I've seen of people wearing masks and tearing down American flags in New York City. Right. So this was energizing and inspiring. And I think it was a message that the Jewish community is united on this issue, that the vast majority of us stand with Israel and stand against anti-Semitism, that America is more united on this issue than you might think. I mean, again, there were so many people there who weren't Jewish. It was good for Congress to see that, and it's good for the country to see that kind of unity on this important issue.
Jonathan, good morning. Thanks for being with us again. We should say Rachel Goldberg, who we saw there, she was on our show yesterday. What an extraordinary voice. She has been through this as her son, her 23-year-old son, is held inside of Gaza. You mentioned it wasn't just Jewish people out there. When you have a couple 100,000, I think it was an important message probably to the country and the world that actually the numbers are big, that most 99.9% of decent people with a shred of humanity are not tearing down posters of children who've been kidnapped. Were you heartened by what you saw yesterday, and how do you carry that forward to continue to fight anti-Semitism?
Well, look, that's a great question. I mean, I was incredibly heartened. I mean, there's been so much darkness, and you talked about Rachel and the Goldberg Poland family, so much darkness. I think about these babies as young as 9 months, and the 3-year-old children and the elderly and disabled held, bound, and gagged in tunnels. It is indefensible to think that on college campuses they're tearing down these posters, and to think that in public places they're chanting "River to the Sea." And yet, I am so energized by yesterday. It was amazing. The kind of show of unity, again, you so rarely see. And again, no one's wearing masks. Everyone is holding hands. No one was arrested. It was peaceful and joyous despite the danger of this moment. So how do we carry it forward? Look, I tell you what, number one, we're going to keep thanking the Biden administration for what they've done and push them to continue to stand with the American people and to stand with the people of Israel. I think number two, same for Congress. Get that bill passed so Israel gets the aid that it needs. And I'm testifying for House Ways and Means today about what to do about the tsunami of anti-Semitism on our college campuses. And then, again, push university administrators to finally find their backbone, Willie. Who can imagine a world in which they sit by while their students are denigrated and insulted and threatened? Now, there have been some good news. George Washington University just suspended one of the worst actors, a group called Students for Justice in Palestine. Columbia suspended them as well. Brandeis suspended them as well. And it should be clear, this isn't about abrogating freedom of speech. The freedom of expression isn't the right to freedom to incite violence. And if you do that, there should be consequences. I'm glad some university presidents are finally getting the message.
And Jonathan, you led me to a question I was going to ask you, which we have now seen at least the beginning of some pushback, finally, from people who run these schools. You mentioned Columbia, other places. Just through the end of the semester, in the case of Columbia, saying you can't hold demonstrations on our campus. But I think, as you say, it's important to be clear, this isn't about free speech. Some of these groups are espousing hatred and explicit anti-Semitism. Do you see the leadership at some of these schools that you've been pushing so hard? Are they now finding the backbone you just described?
Well, they're only going to find the backbone if we hold them accountable. Donors need to hold them accountable. Students need to hold them accountable. And the federal government does, too. You know, last week we launched a legal call-in line, Willie, for students who've experienced this kind of discrimination. It's a violation of the Civil Rights Act, Title VI. Willie, we have over 150 cases we're now exploring. And let me tell you, the university presidents, they might not listen to some students, but when they run the risk of losing hundreds of millions of dollars in federal grants, they're going to respond. 150 cases in a week. We're going to continue to hold their feet to the fire. And by the way, not just us, we shouldn't just wait for us to push for these cases. The Department of Education can be proactive about this and launch investigations. And other authorities like the IRS and even the FBI should look at the parent organizations to see, are they providing material support for terror? That isn't okay under any circumstances.
Jonathan, good morning. It's Richard Haas here. First of all, thank you for your consistent voice over the last 40 days on these issues about anti-Semitism, about what college and university administrators aren't doing. I want to talk to you about another sentence, though, you used, where you talked about people standing up in support for Israel. What do you advise young people? For example, if you were to meet with the hundreds of people working around the administration or on Congress who are signing these open letters calling for an immediate ceasefire, they're not, most of them, I would think, are not anti-Semites. So what do you say? How do you distinguish between Israel's right to its right of self-defense, but people who disagree with how that right is being carried out, either some of the attacks or the lack of a political strategy for meeting legitimate Palestinian political aspirations? How do you go about parsing that? What do you tell people who are looking for answers here?
I mean, Richard, I think this is really the question of the day. So what I would say to these young people, I mean, I served in 2 presidential administrations. And the way that I got it done, even when I didn't agree, is I made my case known internally, fought strongly, ferociously inside the process. And then we always had this idea of disagree and commit. But for these young people who can't seem to abide by that, I would say, number one, recognize the humanity of the other side. If you're going to call for a ceasefire, I can't understand how you don't talk about the plight of the hostages or the 1,200 Israelis who were brutalized, raped, and murdered. So number one, start by recognizing the other side. Number two, I would say, Richard, use an outstretched hand. Talk about the fact that Palestinians have suffered and Israelis have suffered. It's the one-sidedness, Richard, that I don't understand. As someone who says the loss of any Palestinian life, human life, is a tragedy, why is it so hard for some of these protesters? And I'm not saying they're anti-Semites, but I am saying they're hard of heart by not recognizing what the Poland family is going through, by not recognizing what thousands of families are going through right now. There is a way to say, I believe in Palestinian dignity, but I also believe in Israeli humanity. These things should not be, divergent. They need to be convergent if we hope to finally have peace in that region.
So, Jonathan, we've seen a shift in the way that the administration has been speaking about what's happening in Gaza recently, a kind of more emotion, I guess, more empathy for Gaza children, for example. When Tony Blinken went to the Middle East and he said, he saw the faces of his own children when he saw the children in Gaza being killed. Do you think that's actually helpful in some way in kind of redressing some of the feeling that young people that I've spoken to in this country have said to me that, the administration doesn't put as much value on Palestinian lives, and that's what's making them feel angry about what Israel is doing?
Well, I think it's quite a reductive view to say the administration doesn't feel for Palestinian lives when this administration again and again and again has championed the notion of Palestinian dignity and equality and talked about the need for a 2-state solution. But we will never have Palestinian dignity and equality if Israelis don't also have safety and security. And I think what President Biden has gotten right, what Secretary Blinken has gotten right, and what these activists get wrong is they don't recognize that, again, these must be convergent propositions, not divergent ones. And so, look, like I said a moment ago, the death of any Palestinian child is a tragedy. But the tragedy here, let's try to get causal and understand where does it come from. To think that Hamas is hiding their weapons and their fighters in hospitals and schools and homes. I mean, the level of cowardice of this organization that literally sends its terrorists into kibbutzim to butcher families whole cloth, then retreats to hide behind the sick and the wounded. I mean, the biggest sickness here is Hamas. So look, I want nothing more than Israelis and Palestinians live together in peace. but it will only come, and thank God Joe Biden has been clear about this, if both sides recognize their common humanity and if we finally dismantle this terror organization, Hamas. I mean, look, kid, as what they say. Hamas spokespeople are on the record as saying they want to repeat October 7th again and again and again. I don't think it leaves Israel, and I don't think it leaves the West with much of a choice. Like, we didn't have a choice with ISIS. We couldn't let them continue to rape and pillage and murder in Syria.
Right.
We didn't have much of a choice with Al-Qaeda. We don't have much of a choice with Hamas.
CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt. Great conversation. Thank you for coming on this morning, and we will see you again soon.